They say temptation never kicks your door in. It doesn't roar, it doesn't come wrapped in warnings or flashing lights. It slips in the way dusk does, almost unnoticed at first. A soft draft under the door, a change in the light, something you don't pay attention to until suddenly it's everywhere and you can't remember when it began. Sometimes it smells like your favorite wine. Sometimes it sounds like a joke that lands a little too deeply. Sometimes it wears the face of someone you've known for years and never really looked at. Sometimes it looks like your husband's closest friend sitting at your kitchen table, as if he's always belonged there. I remember the air that evening like a second skin. Heavy, still, almost thick enough to touch. The kind of quiet that feels safe on the surface, like a blanket wrapped around your life. The house lights were dim, a warm amber casting soft shadows on the walls. The kids were gone for the weekend. My husband was out of town. The dishwasher hummed in the background. Everything looked calm, ordinary, unremarkable. You'd never look at that scene and think this is where someone's life will split in two. But that's how it works, doesn't it? The biggest shifts never announce themselves. They arrive disguised as normal nights in familiar rooms with familiar people. That's how it happened to me. I can't tell you how many times I've replayed that night since. It's been months and it still rewinds in my mind like a scene I can't pause. Not just the obvious moments, not just the kiss or the touch, but the small things that came before. The way my stomach fluttered when he smiled. The way my voice changed when I spoke to him. The way I ignored that tiny warning in the back of my mind that whispered, this is not harmless anymore. I used to believe I was the kind of woman who had everything under control. Responsible, loyal, sensible, married with 2 kids, a mortgage, and a backyard big enough for a swing set and a plastic slide. The kind of life people double tap when they see it framed just right on social media. Perfect family. Goals. You're so lucky. Lucky, funny word when you're quietly falling apart. On the outside, I had the picture. On the inside, I felt like a sweater with a thread coming loose. You don't mean to pull it. You just fidget, pick at it, roll it between your fingers. And then one day you look down and realize the whole thing is unraveling inch by inch. And you can't even remember when it started. He saw it before I did. Not my husband. His best friend. His name is Lucas. He's known my husband, Ethan, since college. They've shared cramped dorm rooms, cheap beer, secrets, and stupid decisions. When I met Ethan, I met Lucas a few weeks later. He was there at our wedding, in our photos, holding our newborns, grilling in our yard, laughing on our couch. He was woven into our life so tightly that he became part of the furniture. Familiar, safe, background. At least that's how I thought of him. Until I didn't. Until the night I realized Lucas saw me in ways Ethan hadn't in years, not in a dramatic, sweeping way. It wasn't a movie moment. It was smaller, almost gentle, the way his eyes would track my face when I was talking. The way he really heard my words instead of just nodding through them while scrolling a phone. The way he asked, "How are you?" and waited as if he believed there was an answer beyond fine. I didn't plan to become the woman who steps across invisible lines. I didn't wake up and decide, today I will ruin the version of myself I thought I was. Life doesn't give you that kind of timetable. It just holds up a mirror when you least expect it and waits to see who you are when nobody's watching. That night, in my dim kitchen, I met a version of myself I'd buried under years of laundry, dishes, calendars, and quiet disappointments. A version who wanted something more than being dependable. A version who wanted to feel chosen. Ethan is not a monster. Let me say that clearly. He's a decent man, responsible, steady. He works hard. He pays bills on time. He shows up at the parent-teacher conferences and fixes the leaky faucets when I remind him enough times. But somewhere between survival and routine, we stopped seeing each other. There was no big fight, no slammed doors, no dramatic overnight change. Our love didn't explode. It faded, like a light bulb that doesn't burn out, just slowly dims until you realize you've been sitting in half darkness for years. He'd come home exhausted, his shoulders sagging, eyes glued to his phone. A quick hey, a distracted kiss on my cheek, and then he'd sink into the couch scrolling through emails and news until it was time for bed. When I tried to talk about my day, he'd listen with that faraway look, nodding at the right spots without really hearing anything at all. After a while, I stopped trying. We became efficient partners. Housemates with a shared last name, co-managers of the children's schedules and the grocery list. We communicated in reminders and logistics. Did you pay the water bill? Can you pick up Liam from soccer? Don't forget Maya's dentist appointment on Thursday. We only touched when we passed each other in narrow spaces. There's a special kind of loneliness in being married and feeling unseen. It's not the loneliness of being alone, it's the ache of standing next to someone who used to know your favorite version of yourself and realizing they stopped looking long ago. And then there was Lucas. At first, he was just Lucas, the same loud laugh, the same easy confidence, the same habit of walking into our house without knocking. He'd bring over takeout on game nights, toss a football with the kids, steal fries off our plates like he always had. For years I never thought twice about him. Then things started to change in tiny increments. He'd linger in the kitchen after dinner, helping me rinse dishes while Ethan stayed on yet another call in the next room. He'd ask about my job, my hobbies, my stress, and then listen like my answers mattered. Really listen. You have no idea how startling that feels when you've been half ignored for a long time. One evening, we were sitting out back watching the kids run through the sprinkler. The sky was stained with orange and pink and the grass smelled wet and sharp. Ethan had stepped inside to take just one more call that turned into 40 minutes behind a closed door. Lucas handed me a glass of wine and said so casually it almost sounded like a joke, "You look exhausted, but somehow you're still stunning." The word hung in the air, stunning. No one had called me that in years. I laughed it off, but something inside me flinched awake, like a light flickered on in a room I'd locked years ago. Harmless doesn't leave you rehearsing conversations in your head before he arrives. I remember one afternoon watching Lucas through the kitchen window as he fixed the kids' broken basketball hoop. His sleeves were rolled up, forearms streaked with dust, sweat darkening his t-shirt. My son was babbling about something beside him, and Lucas laughed, tipping his head back. At some point, he looked up and caught me staring. His smile shifted, softened, like it was meant only for me. I smiled back. That tiny exchange was nothing on the surface. We'd touched 1,000 times before without a second thought, but this time my breath caught. The glass hovered between us, and I couldn't make myself pull away. He didn't move his hand either. We just stood there for a heartbeat, too long, holding the same glass, sharing the same space. Not speaking, not pretending it was nothing. That moment didn't explode into anything dramatic. We didn't kiss in the kitchen that night. No one walked in on us. We went back outside. We laughed with the neighbors. Ethan eventually reappeared, apologizing for the long call. The kids were sticky with melted popsicles. The night ended, but after that, I couldn't pretend anymore that nothing was happening. We never talked about that kitchen moment. Not the next day, not the next week. But something subtle had shifted. The air felt different when Lucas and I were in the same room. Our conversations dug a little deeper. Our jokes carried an edge. Our silences got heavier. He started dropping by more often when Ethan wasn't home, always with a reason, of course. I left my hoodie here. Thought I'd bring over those books we talked about. Was in the neighborhood, figured I'd say hi. Small, believable excuses, enough to keep everything, on the surface, innocent. We'd drink coffee at the table while the afternoon. Light slanted through the blinds. He'd ask questions no one had asked me in a long time. What do you do just for you these days? What did you want to be before life got in the way? When was the last time you did something that made you lose track of time? Each time those questions scraped through layers of dust I'd let settle on my dreams, I found myself telling him things I'd stopped even thinking about. How I used to paint, how I once stayed up all night working on a piece and watched the sunrise with paint still wet on my fingers. How I'd wanted to open a tiny studio with white walls and big windows before I got pregnant earlier than planned. Lucas listened like these details were treasures, not trivial memories. He looked at me like there was more to see than a tired woman in leggings wiping crumbs off a table. Then came Ethan's trip, 4 days away, meetings, presentations, dinners. He rattled off the schedule at the kitchen counter while checking his emails. I stood beside the stove, stirring pasta sauce, nodding at the right moments. "You'll be okay with the kids?" he asked absently. "Of course," I said, the automatic answer. I wanted him to look up. I wanted him to see the exhaustion under my eyes, the knot of something restless in my chest, the way my voice wobbled just a bit. But he just kissed my forehead out of habit and said, "You're amazing," before heading upstairs to pack. The kids went to my parents' house that weekend. It had been planned for weeks. "It'll give you a little break," my mother had said hopefully. She had no idea how that word, break, sounded in my ears then. The first night without anyone else. In the house, the silence felt enormous. The ticking clock on the wall seemed too loud. The hum of the fridge was suddenly noticeable. I wandered from room to room like a guest in my own life. When the knock came, it made me jump. I opened the door, and there he was, Lucas, leaning on the frame with a bottle of red wine in one hand and a small, almost tentative smile. "Thought you might not want to be alone tonight," he said. The lie I should have told sat right there on my tongue. "I'm fine. I'm tired. I just want to rest." I could have said any of those things. Instead, I stepped back from the doorway. "Come in," I said. We sat on the couch a little farther apart than we usually would. The TV played something we weren't really watching. The lights were low. The wine swept warmth into my veins with each glass. We started with easy stories, college memories, embarrassing moments, funny things Ethan had done back in the day. We laughed so hard at one point that tears gathered in my eyes. It felt so good to laugh like that, deeply and freely, that I didn't stop to examine why. At some point, the conversation slowed. The laughter softened. The space between us felt charged in a way that had nothing to do with jokes anymore. "You're different lately," Lucas said, tilting his head as he watched me. "There's this spark again." I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, suddenly self-conscious. "That bad, huh? Was I really that dull before?" I tried to make it a joke. He shook his head. "No, you were never dull, just tucked away. Now it's like you've stepped back into your own skin." I started painting again, I admitted, just a little, nothing good, just colors and messes. His face broke into a grin. "There she is," he murmured, almost to himself. I felt my chest tighten. A long pause stretched between us, filled with words neither of us had the courage to say. Then he took a breath, his voice lower when he spoke again. "Can I be honest about something?" he asked. I should have said no. Instead, I nodded. "I've always admired you," he said, "even when we were younger, even when you and Ethan first started dating. I used to think, if things had gone differently, if timing had been something else, my life might have led me here instead." I felt the room tilt slightly. The TV faded into static. Every single beat of my heart felt too loud. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen from him before. No jokes, no masks, no casual smirk. Just a raw, unguarded want he wasn't hiding anymore. I opened my mouth to change the subject, to push it away, but nothing came out. He moved slowly, like he was approaching a frightened animal. He shifted closer, giving me so much time to pull back, to stand up, to laugh and say, "You're drunk, go home." I had 100 chances to end it before it began. I didn't take any of them. When his lips finally touched mine, they were gentle, hesitant, asking for an answer without words. And God help me, I answered. I leaned into it. My hand found the side of his neck almost without my permission. The kiss deepened, softened, warmed. Felt like someone had opened a window in a room I'd convinced myself no longer needed air. I told myself it was only a kiss, just one. Nobody had to know. But we both knew, even then, that nothing was just a kiss anymore. That night, an entire version of my life cracked quietly, without witnesses. You might think everything exploded directly after that. That we fell into some torrid affair, sneaking around, booking hotel rooms, whispering in dark corners. But reality is rarely so dramatic. Real-life wreckage is quieter. We didn't sleep together that night. We pulled apart eventually, breathing hard, eyes stunned. Lucas swore under his breath and buried his face in his hands. I felt my cheeks burning, my heart pounding in my ears. "I should go," he said, standing abruptly. "Yeah," I whispered. He was at the door when he turned back. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have. I crossed a line." "So did I replied. He nodded once, like that admission weighed on him and also relieved him, and then he left. The house clicked back into silence. You'd think that would have scared me straight, that I would have woken up the next morning horrified and cut all ties. But shame doesn't always show up at the right time. Sometimes it comes later, slowly, after desire has taken what it wants. We tried to pretend nothing happened. For a while it almost worked. Lucas stayed away for a bit. Fewer visits, shorter texts, more distance. I told myself, good, this is good, we'll let it blow over. No one ever has to know. Then Ethan mentioned Lucas's birthday at breakfast. "We should have him over," Ethan said, scrolling through his phone. "Just us. He hates big parties anyway. We'll keep it simple. Order in, maybe." I felt my fork pause halfway to my mouth. "Sure," I managed. "That sounds fine." That night, I spent too long getting ready. I told myself I was just being polite, that you dress up a bit when you host a birthday dinner. But I stood in front of my closet longer than necessary, choosing the dress that made me feel like I still existed in a way beyond Mom. I curled my hair, I added eyeliner, I smoothed lotion on my knees as if he would notice. When Lucas came to the door holding a bouquet of flowers, my heart stuttered. "These are for you," he said, eyes catching mine for a second before flicking away. "Birthday tradition. I always bring something for the host." Ethan laughed. "He's lying. He just finally learned some manners," he joked, clapping Lucas on the back. We ate, we drank, we sang an off-key happy birthday, as the kids giggled. Lucas played the clown for them, pretending to blow out their candles, making them shriek with laughter. On the surface, it was a normal, wholesome family evening, but every time our fingers brushed over a dish or our eyes met over the table, it felt like a secret note being passed between us. After the kids were tucked into bed, Ethan's phone rang again. "Work," he said, grimacing apologetically. "I'll be quick." I watched him disappear into the hallway, watched the door to his office close. The muffled sound of his voice seeped through. Lucas and I were left in the living room. The plates on the table were half cleared. The candles had burned down to little puddles of wax. The playlist had looped to something soft and almost melancholic. For a long minute, neither of us spoke. Lucas swirled the last inch of his drink in the glass, watching it spin. I pretended to scroll through my phone, my thumb unmoving on the screen. Then he broke the silence. "For my birthday," he said slowly. "I only want one thing." My heart dropped straight into my stomach. Don't get dramatic on me now, I tried to joke. You already got cake and flowers. That's more than most people. Get. He didn't smile. I'm serious, he said. I set my phone down. You shouldn't, I whispered, already knowing what he meant. I know I shouldn't, he replied, but I still want to.